Hi everyone, my name is Masha, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a teardrop loop for your alpha bracelets. So looking at my pattern, I can see that I have 30 bass strings, and then I have one more string that I'm using for the background, which makes 31. But obviously if I'm making a loop, I'm folding the strings, thus creating 2 strings out of 1, so I need an even number of strings to be able to create the pattern. So what I'm going to do to avoid this problem is I'm just going to add one more bass string, making 31 bass strings, and I'll have that one extra string for the background, making it 32. So by adding one more extra bass string, I'm probably going to add it at the bottom of this pattern, it just creates one extra row of background knots. So it's not really altering that pattern that much, it just gives one extra row of background. And I don't mind that, so that's what I'm going to do. So if I have 31 bass strings plus one string that I'm going to be weaving with, the string I'm going to be weaving with for the beginning, for the background, is going to be white. So the string that I'm going to be using for my loop is also going to be white. I prefer it when the bass strings match to the loop and to the ties, so I'm going to have my bass strings also be white so it all matches, but you don't have to do that if you don't really care about that. So once again, reiterating, I have 30 strings in the pattern. I'm adding one extra string to make it even, so now I have 31 strings for the bass, and I have one extra string for the background, making it 32. So 32 divided by 2 is 16, which means I need to have 16 cut up strings, which I'm then going to fold in half to create 32. One of those strings, however, is going to be used for both the loop and for doing the background once I finish the loop. So that one of the strings is going to be extra long to be able to accommodate for that. What I usually do when I'm making alphas where I need a lot of the background color is I just don't cut the string. If I'm using a string a lot for the background, I just use it as is. I don't cut it at all, and I sort of untangle it as I go along. But you don't have to do that, you can just cut it a little bit longer than usual and then just weave a new one in once you get to it. So let's get into it. So as you can see, I have all my strings out here. These are 15, and then I have an extra string right here, which will be the 16th string, which I'm not going to cut. It's just going to be in the form that it was originally. I usually have my string on bobbins, but I am currently on holiday, so I don't have my bobbins with me. I'll be untangling that later and just twisting it onto bobbins. So the first thing you're going to do whenever you're creating any alpha is you're going to count the strings multiple times before you start making the bracelet, because if you make the bracelet and then you realize midway that you've got one too many or one too little strings, it's going to be a pain. So count your strings before you start making the bracelet many times, just to make sure you have exactly how many you need. Thankfully I've already done that. So the next step is folding your string in half. My strings aren't super long because I'm using them as a base, and I don't think my bracelet is going to be that long. I think this is way too long anyway. But you fold your strings and then try and figure out where you want the loop to begin. So if these how my strings are folded, I think I want the loop to start right about here and finish right about here. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to mark it with my finger by just holding it, and then right here I'm just going to add a piece of tape securing the strings in the position that I want them. So this is where I want my loop to begin. I'm going to start making the loop, and then I can sort of measure and see if the loop is long enough from where I am. So to add in the next string, as I said, these are 15, so I need a 16th string, which is going to be the one that I make the loop with. I make sure that this is the same length as the other strings by putting them in the same place. I might want to tape it down with a different piece of tape. I might just pick this tape up and insert it in there as well, so I don't have to cut another piece of tape. So this is the string that I'm going to be doing the weaving with. This one is the longest one that I haven't cut. So to start making a loop, the beginning is exactly the same as I showed you in the teardrop loop video that I did for normal patterns. It's exactly the same. So you do a forward knot onto the entirety of the bass strings, and then you do a backward knot onto the entirety of the bass strings. Then once again a forward knot and a backward knot. And you continue doing this until your loop reaches the desired length that you want. You can at any point stop and check if your loop is the desired length by just sort of twisting it into the position of a loop and checking if it's long enough for you. I don't think that my loop is long enough, so I'm going to do a few more knots and then check again. Alright, right about now I feel like my loop is the length that I want it to, so we can continue on to the next step. So if you've watched my how to make triangle ends video, this part will be very simple for you to understand because it's basically the same thing. So we take each of these edges and we divide them in half. So I have 16 strings on each. I'm going to divide them into 8, 8 on here and 8, 8 on here. So focusing on the left part for now, we are going to start making the triangle end on the left part. Since all the strings are the same colour, it really doesn't matter what order you do them in, so I'm just going to be doing forward knots with a string onto the rest one by one. So we did a forward knot with one of the strings onto the entire left strand. We're completely excluding the right strand for now. Then we take another string, we do a forward knot onto the entirety of the left strand, excluding the one we already made the first knot with, so that one is off to the side. Now again, we take another white thread, we do a forward knot onto the entire strand, excluding the two that we already made knots with. And we continue doing that with each of the threads. The only thing that you have to remember is that the long thread, the one that you made the loop with and the one that you're going to be using for the background, should be the last thread. So you're not making any forward knots with it, it's going to be the last one you make a forward knot onto. Then you do the same thing for the other side right here, except you do backward knots. So taking any string, making a backward knot onto the rest of the group. Then taking a different string and making another backward knot onto the rest of the group, excluding the one that we already made a knot with. And continuing on until we reach the last thread. So now we've made an opening for the triangle end on the left. We're going to start knotting all the strings together. So at this point, once you've opened the triangle, you're going to start treating your bass strings as if it is a normal bracelet instead of an alpha. So you're going to be weaving with your bass strings to create sort of the triangle effect of the bracelet. To do that, you want to find the middle strings first. You want to do a knot between them, and then you want to start bringing each of them out to the side. So the one on the right, you're going to do forward knots up until the very last string, and the one on the left, you're going to do backward knots up until the very last string. So once you're finished with the first row, you take the two threads on the left and the two threads on the right, and you put them to the side, so that they're not in the way of the next row. Then you separate the two threads in the middle, and you do the same thing with them. You do a knot between the two first, and then forward knots on the right until this thread, forward knots on the left until this thread, excluding these ones. So once again, you separate two more threads on the left, two more threads on the edges on the right, and you repeat the process, separating the middle threads, doing a knot between them, forward knots on the right, backward knots on the left, and you do that until you run out of string. So there you go, the left part is finished. You repeat the same exact process on the right part, and then you connect the thread. So I finished the triangle on the other side, and now I'm going to be connecting the two triangles by making my alpha. But one thing that I forgot to mention, and I actually realized that I made a mistake while I was doing this, is on the left side I have my string, which is the longest, which I haven't cut, when I was doing the first row, when I had made a knot in the center and then did the strings with backward knots over here, the last knot, which was onto the long string, should have been a backward forward and not just a backward knot. So I'm just going to quickly untie one of the knots here and make it into a backward forward instead. The reason for this being that you want the longest string, the one that you're going to be using as the background, to be on the very, very left, because now I'm going to go into making the alpha. So this is where I start making my alpha. I just do one plain row of white along each of the bass strings. So there you go, you've successfully tied the two triangle ends together and you've created the first row of your alpha. From this point on, you can start making your bracelet as normal, continuing just as a regular alpha. Of course, you can see there are a bit of holes here. Just because you went from making a normal bracelet to making an alpha, you're sort of missing a couple of knots there. But I don't know, maybe pushing the thread a little bit higher will help you sort of mask that. But they're still going to be there because you are missing a couple of knots. You went from one knot type to another knot type. You're missing a couple of knots right there. But in general, that doesn't really bother me personally. If it bothers you too much, maybe don't do this, because I'm pretty sure it's just going to happen anytime because you are missing knots. But yeah, there you have it. That's how you make a sort of teardrop loop with alphas. If you ever make anything based on any of my videos, whether that be a tutorial or any other kind of video, I always love to see your guys' creations, so send them over to me on Instagram, whether that be in DMs or a post. I always love to see them. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I post videos every Tuesday and Saturday, and I will see you on Saturday. Bye!